I am your host, Thalia Mejia, and this presentation will cover the mangroves community, a rich wetland with high biodiversity and ecological benefits. Mangroves are trees and shrubs that grow in coastal, saline, or brackish waters. You'll see just how important they are for the world. So, we're going to go ahead and talk about the mangrove distribution worldwide. Now, according to the National Oceans Service, NOAA, there's about 80 different species of mangroves, but only 4 can be found in Florida. As you can see, mangroves can grow on the coastlines where the waves meet inland. I'll talk about mangroves from multiple parts of the world, not just Florida, because they're everywhere. Not everywhere, but you can see how they are distributed around the world. You can see that it's mainly they're near the equator. And like I said, although there's around 80 species of wonderful mangroves, only 4 can be found in Florida. There's the red, white, black, and buttonwood mangrove trees are found in the place that I call home. I'm sure many of you listening to this and watching this call Florida your home as well. Rhizophora mangle, which is one of my favorite ones, the red mangrove. Langucularia racemosa, if I'm saying that right, which is the white mangrove, and Avicennia germinans, which is the black mangrove, and Conocarpus erectus, which is the buttonwood mangrove. It's not frequently talked about, but it's here in Florida and it gets researched on too. So you can see that this is where you can find mangroves around in Florida, mainly in the south. And I'm hoping I get to visit the Everglades soon so that I can go and see the mangroves over there. So mangroves, their climates, they have a very specific tropical climate. They can't survive below freezing temperatures, and they are very tolerant to high salinity levels. The trees there, the animals, they are used to the water being very salty. They live in brackish waters. And it's very dependent on tidal fluctuations because that's how sediment comes in, and the sediment helps protect from erosion. And the tidals also remove waste, which is very helpful because if all the waste was there, it'd be too much for the ecosystem. And here we have the hydrographs of mangroves. You can clearly see that they do get a lot of precipitation, and especially with hurricanes. Hurricanes, a huge spike. I mean, hurricanes are they threaten us, they threaten our ecosystem, but what's good is that these trees, these mangroves, this mangrove ecosystem, especially with the Rhizophora mangle trees, the red mangroves, their prop roots help with hurricanes. So all the waves that are crashing into them, they absorb that that shock, that pressure, and it helps to decrease erosion, and it protects us too. It protects people that are living close by. It protects the animals that live there within the roots, and it protects the community in general. It protects our beaches, our shorelines, everything. So that spike is very important to note during hurricanes because it's telling us that the flood, the precipitation during hurricanes it just increases dramatically. And yep, here's the flood durations of mangroves. So usually mangrove ecosystems get flooded twice a day by the rise and fall of tides. This is why you find the red mangroves closest to the water. They're mangled prop roots the tree will start running at you any second. If you look at the photos, you'll see images of them. At the beginning of this presentation, there was an image of them. But their mangled prop roots just look like they're gonna jump up and attack you any second. Uh, they're very important though. They are what protect them and us from harsh waves that cause erosion. Our precious reservoir mango trees take up the bulk of the fight, thank goodness. You know, thank you for their service. On to the hydroperiod patterns. These indicate and they dictate the gradients of nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon. Too much or too little nutrients can disrupt the delicate balance of these ecosystems and cause trees to die. These are box plots from a research paper. They indicate the hydroperiod pattern, so flood duration, frequency, and level in 3 consecutive years after implementation of restoration activities in impaired mangrove areas in Laguna de Terminos, Campeche, Mexico. That's where I don't come from that place, from specifically Laguna de Terminos, but I am Mexican, so it was pretty cool reading about this stuff. Prior to the restoration in 2012, there were no significant differences in the frequency of inundation between sites in 2012. The flooding duration as well as the water level, there was significant differences between sites in 2012. But for 2013, the significant differences between the sites were observed regarding the frequency, the duration, and level of flooding. And in 2014, the flooding duration and the water level differed significantly as well. And you can see, if I remove, you won't be able to see that bottom one because I think my little video is disturbing it. But those are the hydroperiod patterns. And of course, one of the most important geological formations that mangroves give us is peat formation. And peat is very, very important because it has a lot of organic material in it that hasn't been fully broken down yet. And scientists can actually use this peat formation to for carbon dating, so they can see exactly how long certain materials have been there for with their carbon dating. And it's different from what people would call muck, where muck is just really broken down stuff that it can be broken down by crabs or other organisms, and you can't really use it for carbon dating. So peat is very important. Peat is also used in gardens. It's a little controversial, but it's used for a lot of plants, and gardeners like using it because of it's a perfect mixture that helps plants grow. They grow really well. And of course, it has a large supply of detrital sediments. This is because of the tides again. And this mangroves are really important for forming estuaries and mudflats as well. As for soil and water characteristics, we've got the salinity, which ranges from 2% to 90%. Like I said, these trees can really handle the saltiness. They're the most saltiest trees you'll find. And of course, they grow best in water that's 50% freshwater and 50% seawater. They live on the coast and they get their water from the ocean and tidal waves. They thrive despite twice daily flooding by ocean tides, but they're champions. That's what they do. It's no biggie to them. And the pH can range from 6.65 to 8.42, so we've got like a kind of neutral to a very alkaline sort of range, but it's not it's not super acidic. And then dissolved oxygen, 3.25 to 11.78 milligrams per liter, which is very important for them. And the major species, we're going to leave out the buttonwood because it's not talked about as frequently or as much, but that's because the main ones are red, white, and black mangroves. Red mangroves have the highest salinity levels in their leaves and roots since they are closest to the water. Therefore, they can tolerate high salinity levels more than the other two. Black mangroves come next with a higher salinity tolerance than white mangroves, but less than the red species. White mangroves are usually the least tolerant, but all of these trees have a relatively higher level of salinity in them than other plants. What I found to be cool about these trees is the way that they can exclude or excrete salt in order to survive. Rhizophora mangold, the red ones, they are able to remove salts and take in fresh water. Their roots sort of act like a bouncer at the entrance of a club. It won't let you in if you're too brackish. White and black mangroves adapted to high salinity by excreting, I like to think of it as sweating, out salt through their leaves and roots. Think of it like when it gets too hot, so your body sweats to keep cool. White and black mangroves do something similar by sweating out excess salts. These adaptations aren't perfect. All of these species still tend to have a very high salinity level compared to plants that don't live in this type of coastal environment. And of course, some environmental drivers are the frequency of tidal currents, loose, wet soils. That's what they need for whether it's for the prop roots or for the other trees to kind of establish themselves in the ecosystem. Of course, salinity levels. They tolerate 2% to 90% salinity levels. And temperature. Remember, these trees, they grow near the equator in tropical climates that don't, places that don't have harsh winters or barely a winter season, like Florida. As for endangered species, we've got two species that aren't in Florida. I don't know if I'm gonna say this correctly, but the Sonaratia griffiniti and the Bruguiera hainesi. We're gonna go with that. But they're endangered due to multiple reasons. They can be endangered due to land conversion, deforestation, nutrient pollution, climate change, and especially aquaculture. Aquaculture is a pretty big one, which is, shrimp and crab farming. We're going to get into shrimp farming a little later. And one of my favorite parts, the wildlife. We've got the American alligator, known as the alligator Mississippianus. Mississippianus? Yeah. Then we have right here in the middle left, the Crocodilus acutus, which is the American crocodile. I'm sure you guys recognize these two. They're pretty common. And the bottom left corner, we got the Ardea alba, which is the great egret. Right in the middle, let's see if I can do a pointer. Ooh. Right in the middle, we got the Ardea herodias, which is the great blue heron. And in the far right corner right here, we got a Calanectis bocardi, which is the Bocart swimming crab. And continuing on with the wildlife, we've got right over here in the top left, mercenaria, which is just a clam. And we have right here in the top right, the Lacerus minor, which is the little red bat. And here's a pretty decent sized fish called the Lutinus griseus, which is a gray snapper. And of course, right over here, we got the Pelicanus occidentalis, which is the brown pelican. We got Dory over here from Nemo. I'm kidding. It's called a blue tang, scientific name, Paracantharus hepatis, aka Dory. It's Dory, guys. And then one of my favorite birds, which is the roseate spoonbill. Scientific name is Platalea ajaja. Sounds like I'm laughing in Spanish. As for unique wildlife, the trees are probably the most unique because they can handle high salinity levels, as we talked about earlier. But another one are the crabs, which are the Sesarmidae crabs, right here in this picture. They are usually found in mangroves and feed mostly on plant materials. They have the inner edges of their pincers are usually really sharp, so they can cut up leaves. And they're often seen moving and foraging in the atmospheric air instead of in water. And of course, we got a nice food web here. You can see that it's all interconnected. We've got systems connecting with each other, especially the seagrass system. Freshwater, it's all connected. Mangroves help out with the freshwater ecosystem and the seagrass, and all of these animals live and they go in between. Speaking of supporting, communities, we got coral reefs and seagrass. Coral reefs, they can be found with the mangroves, and they also help with tidal waves and also with high biodiversity. So does seagrass. Seagrass acts as another home to juvenile fish and other organisms. Without seagrass or without coral reefs, it damages the mangroves, and also vice versa. Without the mangroves, it hurts the seagrass and the coral reefs. As for human impacts, we've got commercial development, dam construction, overfishing, again, aquaculture, and pollutants from agriculture and waste. All of this affects the mangroves, and there's restoration efforts to try and fix this. Such as protection plans. They want to discontinue eye stalk ablation in fish hatcheries. This eye stalk ablation is when they take out one eye from female shrimp in order to force them to reproduce in captivity. They're trying to stop this and do more, create a better way to reproduce shrimp, quickly for something that was on a local scale. The shrimp industry is now on a global scale. It's been growing really fast. And of course, there's environmental monitoring initiative in Vietnam for, again, the shrimp and crab agriculture. And seagrass, they're trying to plant more seagrass, transplant healthy seagrass to areas where seagrass has died. One of these is in Puerto Rico. So they're helping. As for what else we need to find out about these mangroves, well, peat soil formation, forest stability over time. They still need to figure out carbon storage, which is also known as blue carbon, when carbon is stored into the water or in the ocean, and also how effective are mangroves to sea level rise? How resilient are they? Restoration efforts include all of these. We've got from Mikoko Pamoja in Kenya. We've got plans in India, and there's a Mangrove for Life project in Nigeria. Lots of different restoration efforts. In summary, mangrove systems are crucial for storm surges, protection from erosion, wildlife, and fishing industry. They are found in tropical areas, mainly near the equator. Species found in Florida are red, white, and black mangroves. And aquaculture has caused the loss of 40% of mangroves area, but sustainability practices are reducing this impact. And all these benefits include protection from extreme weather. Mangroves are a safe haven for so many different marine animals. And of course, um, they provide some protection from climate change. Although with climate change and the warming weather, mangroves are they're being seen more up north in salt marshes. They're kind of replacing salt marsh ecosystems, which can be a problem in its own. But mangroves do help out with a lot of things. That is the end of this presentation. I hope you guys learned something about the mangrove ecosystem, and I hope you found it interesting. This is your host, Thalia Mejia, signing out. All right.